Call this meeting in order of the Franklin County Board of County Commissioners, Wednesday, February 9th, 2022. Janet, roll call.
Commissioner Sotomayor?
Present.
Commissioner Harris?
Present.
Chair Dunn?
Present.
Vice Chair Dickinson?
Present.
Commissioner Waymire?
Present. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Administered today.
Everyone, my name is Greg Hall. Thank you for allowing me to be here. I just want to share one verse from Mark chapter 9. Jesus said, "Those who want to be great shall be the servant of all." So thank you for your service and for striving to help make this community great by helping to serve the needs of others. So with that, I'd like to pray. Lord, thank you that every one of us can truly be great in your eyes, because we can choose to be a servant to those around us and to look for ways to build others up and to help them in their lives. God, I thank you for this commission, and I pray the blessing of God on each one of them, that you would lead and guide them with great wisdom and with great love. We thank you so much for today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Derek, any correspondence or organizational business?
No, sir.
Okay. Public comment. We have public comment today.
Yes, we do.
Okay, a citizen desiring to speak on an item not on the agenda may do so at this time. Discussion is limited to 5 minutes, and the commission will not take action or discuss items at this time. Discussion should be limited to matters of county commission business, and public comment is not permitted in regarding to personnel matters or on pending legal matters. Items introduced under public comment may become an agenda items at a later date.
Norman?
Good morning, I'm Norman Woogie, 3790 Pawnee Road, Ottawa, Kansas. I'm disappointed in each one of you guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In the last 2 weeks, I've had complaints that I gave publicly. I expected a response. Surely you guys have time to think about that. And these response would be to come solve a problem, let me know where I'm at. Even conversation with your counsel, I'd accept that. In a relationship even like ours, communication is essential to stay healthy, if you like your job. That is no history, the damage is done. And I now will get busy to do change. You passed up an opportunity to know what I was thinking. I'll now be quiet. I know that our government is a representative government where you represent us. In an organism where silent treatment is given, that's not wise. Well, I'll do what I have to do. The last comment is, and this comes from scripture and so forth, wise men don't spend money they don't have. Thank you.
James Wallace?
James Wallace, 2447 Nebraska Road. I was going through my emails and I was wondering if the Franklin County is doing away with the Monday study session. I looked back on my emails, went back to as far as 2020, and I counted 22 canceled study sessions, not including the year 2022. From 8/24/20 to 11/29/21. I just wondered if I missed the notice about we're no longer doing study sessions, or you guys ran out of something to study, or I might have missed some dates. I just thought that as taxpayers, we should be owed an explanation unless you are reducing the wages, you know. And I was wondering if there's any transparency on this. Thank you.
Anyone else, Janet?
That's it.
Okay. Consent agenda items are consider and approve the tax change orders in a negative amount of $1,147.64. Consider and approve Franklin County Commission meeting minutes for February 2nd, 2022. Consider and approve offering the 2022 dust control program and soliciting bids for the application of magnesium chloride solution. And consider and accept dedication of a grant of easement for lot split number 2202-1948, Gary Weisman. I'd entertain a motion for the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second. Janet?
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Dickinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Chair Dunn.
Yes. First item of business, discuss and review Franklin County EMS fourth quarter 2021 reports and consider the approval of the fourth quarter 2021 adjustments and the collections reported. Christie?
Good morning. So last time I was here, you asked me to change to quarterly reports instead of monthly. So I'm here to give you our last quarter reports and also review what we did as a total for last year.
Microphone a little bit down. There you go.
Can you hear me better now? Okay.
Well, still kind of an
Almost too
echo.
much.
So I'm going to go ahead and get started. If we're looking at the actual fourth quarter report, a lot of this will be reflected in the annual report as well, because this does reflect the year as a whole. You can see that we were actually able to bring in about $257,000 more than what we had anticipated. That can be attributed to a much larger call volume, which we'll get into as well. And it does appear that maybe some of our insurance companies are paying a little bit more than what they have in the past. But with that said, we do have our adjustments, which are our contractual write-offs that need to be approved, and that's in the amount of $125,706.04. And then we have our collections report, what was sent over for there. Is it okay if I bring these up for signature?
Okay, this takes a motion. Go to read, I make a motion to approve the fourth quarter 2021 adjustments and collection reports. Motion to approve. Second.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Dickinson?
Yeah.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Chair Dunn.
Yes.
Commissioners, before Christie gets started on her second item, I just want to apologize. Our acoustics are a little bit off this morning. Dustin hasn't had the opportunity yet to get in and fine tune them in light of the new surface on the floors. So please just bear with us on that.
I do have a question. What's the difference between the write-off or the collections and the Kansas set-off program?
So the Kansas set-off program is actually through the state. Anybody that gets a tax return through the state of Kansas, with us being a government entity, we can send collections there. The other is a private collection agency, so that would be utilized more for people that live out of state.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And if we're missing, isn't it if we're missing a full name or a social or some of their information, they go to the set-offs as opposed to adjustment, collections?
That is correct, yes. Any other questions? No, okay. So with the fourth quarter activities, you can see that definitely the southern half of Ottawa is our busiest area, followed closely by the north half of Ottawa, and then third largest area where we are running is with the hospital doing patient transfers. The next page just shows where it's broken down by a typical call per day, and it reflects the same thing overall. I've just got a nice pie chart for you to show where our activities are, and again, Ottawa is the largest amount of our activity, then followed up by our transfers, and Franklin District, which is the city of Wellsville, that's our largest rural district where we run calls. Most of our calls are medical emergencies. You can see though that we did have quite a spike in sick calls over the course of 2021. Most of those have to do with COVID because a lot of people think I have it, just gave some very vague symptoms. The most, in our fourth quarter, we brought most of our patients here locally to Advent Health. The next page is just our call times. We're busiest between about 7 o'clock in the morning till about 9 o'clock at night, and then things start to taper off. And then we also have versus our ALS versus BLS calls. Again, you can see by this, ALS, or advanced life support, the majority of our calls, overwhelming majority, have turned to ALS. Our patients are just a lot sicker than what they have been in the past. And then last but not least, the last time I was here, you had asked about move-ups and status zero. So in the fourth quarter, we did 68 move-ups. That was down. We did 87 in 2020 during the same quarter. But however, we were at status zero 22 times. In 2020, during the same quarter, we only had 10. So that's fairly significant. Another thing that I wanted to add was we did have to call in for mutual aid twice in the fourth quarter because we did not have enough ambulances to handle the call volume. So that is what I have for the quarterly report. Are there any questions about that?
Can you explain the move-ups and the status zero?
Yes, I absolutely can. So a move-up is if both of our ambulances in the city of Ottawa are out on calls. Since we know that Ottawa is the busiest district, the Wellsville truck will move up to Ottawa to handle call volume. Status zero would be at the point where we had every ambulance out on a call.
The two instances of mutual aid, were those where we had 3 staff trucks that were all busy and we had a fourth call, or were they where we were just not able to staff a third truck?
We've always been able to staff 3 trucks. Well, that hasn't, even staffing shortages have not affected that. In one instance, we had 3 ambulances out and a fourth call came in. Another time, we actually had 4 ambulances out because we had administrator on call had come back in, so at that point, we needed a 5th ambulance.
Any other questions of Christie?
Did we have to assist in mutual aid or anybody else?
We do. Anderson County called us about a month ago to assist them for mutual aid, and we had the staffing to be able to provide that service for them. So there is some give and take there with it.
I think that's a very good thing.
Although I can't imagine what the response time is if you have to wait for mutual aid to get there.
Typically, it's not as long as you would think. We try to pick our partner by proximity to which area is closest. So we definitely wouldn't be calling out like Miami County to come down to Williamsburg. Any other questions before I move on? Okay, so looking at the annual report, the numbers pretty much for the financials were already reflected in the fourth quarter report. So unless you have specific questions, I'm just going to go ahead and skip over that. However, with activities per district, I do have a 5-year comparison for you on this one. What is interesting to note is that there was, in 2017, we had Ottawa South with a lot of calls running out of it, and you'll notice that Advent Health had none. At the time, we did not differentiate between transfers. It was just strictly where the call was located. And 2018 started breaking out that number. But you can see that there's been just a incremental rise pretty much everywhere over most of our districts. The next page, I do have that broken out in calls per day per district. The next page is the pie chart again that shows our activities per district. Again, this over the course of the last 5 years, we're still looking at the city of Ottawa being busiest, then followed by transfers, then by Franklin Township. Our call types, you will notice that this year we had kind of an interesting dynamic where we had a fairly significant decrease in medical emergencies, but an increase in sick calls, also an increase in trauma calls. With the trauma calls, our population is unfortunately aging, and we run a lot of falls and results in broken bones. So definitely keeping a watch on the trauma calls and hoping that we can get some public education out on how to reduce that hazard. Our receiving hospitals, with this one, Advent Health Ottawa's always been our primary hospital that we transport to. What is interesting is that there's been a steady decline in the patients that are taken to Olathe and a very steady increase on those that are taken to Advent Health Shawnee Mission. Looking at our call times, I was rather surprised that even over the course of 5 years, they still keep the same flow. We're still the busiest from about 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. And that's remained the same over the course of 5 years. The next one reflects our level of care. As I was talking, that our patients this year have been much sicker. I think this graphic very much represents that, where you can see that great big spike in advanced life support calls. Definitely a significant decrease in basic life support calls. And then the very last page is our unit availability, which I was able to pull statistics and get our status 0 and move-ups over the course of the last 5 years. Overall, in 2017, we did 260 move-ups. Last year, we did 373. We also did, over the course of last year, we were at status 0 85 times, which I feel is fairly significant. Call volume overall has gone up about a call a day. So we are a little more busier than what we've been in the past. So I would expect that we would have to do more move-ups and be at status 0 more times.
Looks like over the 5 years, the trends seem to duplicate themselves.
Right, they do.
Well, that should close out 2021 then.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Christie. Okay, Dustin, you're up next for the second quarter budget adjustments. fiscal year 2022 adult second quarter budget adjustments.
Good morning, Commissioners. What we have for approval this morning is just a budget adjustment for our adult funds in the second quarter of fiscal year '22. These total $7,691.82, and funds are just being moved from one line item where we have a surplus to another line item that we need to cover a shortfall. This budget adjustment was approved by our advisory board on February 4th, so I will stand for any questions at this time.
Questions at this time, so a positive response was, I make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2022 adult second quarter budget adjustments.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Janet, roll call.
Commissioner Dickinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Chair Dunn.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Kenny up for a whole slug of rezoning applications.
Good morning.
Before you get started, Kenny, I didn't know if we could somehow streamline the narrative on all these.
Sure. Yep, I will try
So
to.
many of them, but streamline a little bit.
Sure. So the first item on the agenda is for rezoning for Weisman. This one sort of relates to the item that was also on the consent agenda. It's part of a rezoning in order for these individuals to do a lot split. And as part of that lot split process is where we ask for dedication of additional right-of-way. So that sort of happened on the consent agenda. This request is to, property is currently 40 acres. They're requesting to rezone a portion of it to the A1 or to the A2 district, and then another portion to the RE district in order to create a 7-acre parcel. The Planning Commission did make a recommendation of approval of the request, and staff is recommending approval of this item as well. I would just mention that these property owners did come in yesterday. I think they're looking at maybe dividing the property again. So this one might actually be coming back to you again in the future as they want to try to split off another tract from this 40 acres as well. So.
Any questions over this zoning application? A positive motion read, I make a motion to approve rezoning application number 2109-1929 Weisman to rezone approximately 33.85 acres from an A1 agriculture district to an A2 transitional agriculture district, and to rezone approximately 7.00 acres from an A1 agriculture district to an RE residential estate district, and to amend the official county zoning map accordingly. Do I have a motion? So move.
Second.
Janet?
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Dickinson?
Yes.
Chair Dunn.
Yes. Okay, Kenny.
Okay. This second item is a request to do some rezonings. Basically, the property owner or one of these property owners is trying to adjust the boundaries of a couple parcels. Previously, he purchased a small portion from a neighbor, and then he owns 2 adjoining tracts, so just sort of adjusting the lines between those 2 tracts, but that also affects the zoning of the properties, and so that is where this request comes before you guys. There are no new parcels that are really being created as part of this request. It's just sort of, again, adjusting boundary lines. And actually, when you look at the request, there will actually be more land brought into the A1 district, and the areas that are going to be more of a residential properties will be sort of reduced in size a little bit. And then the zoning will be a little bit more consistent between all of the parcels because they'll pretty much all be zoned RE in this area now. So I guess the Planning Commission did make a recommendation of approval of this request. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you had any.
Any questions, Kenny, on this one? Okay, the motion will read, consider the approval of rezoning application number 2112-1943, RCLA Properties LLC, to rezone approximately 3.7 acres from RE Residential Estate District to the A1 Agriculture District, to rezone approximately 5.44 acres from an A2 Transitional Agriculture District to an RE Residential Estate District, and to rezone approximately 14.67 acres from the A2 Transitional Agriculture District to an A1 Agriculture District. I have a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second. Janet?
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Dickinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Chair Dunn.
Yes. Okay, Kenny?
Okay.
Go on.
The next request is a part of a zoning amendment to update our floodplain regulations. As the board is aware, FEMA is in the process of publishing new flood insurance rate maps for Franklin County. Those are supposed to go into effect on March 8th, so we're getting close to that. As part of those new maps, FEMA does require us to make sure that our floodplain regulations are consistent with their current regulations. And then the state of Kansas also has some additional requirements beyond what FEMA has. So what we have done is I've worked with the Planning Commission on looking at our floodplain regulations. I would start by saying, well, there's overall, if you looked at the two, there's a whole lot of changes in regards to, I use the state's current model regulations rather than trying to go through and make sure that everything complied with our current regulations. So that was probably the biggest change, is just a little bit of format. Most of the general standards are staying the same. If you're building a house, you still have to be 1 foot above base flood if you're in the floodplain. There are some additional provisions that are allowed. And so just to give you a real quick highlight, part of that is adopting that we are going to use the new March 8th, 2022 flood insurance rate maps. We also, the current regulations or the proposal has some provisions for hazardous materials not being able to be stored in the special flood hazard area. There is a exception that is provided for that. The state actually let me know that a lot of the rural communities provide a provision that allows for the storage of anhydrous ammonia in sealed tanks in the floodplain for a period not to exceed 30 days. And so I went ahead and incorporated that wording into the regulation as well. So that's sort of a new provision. There are two new provisions that are allowed. One is for the possibility of somebody to build an agricultural structure in the floodplain using wet floodproofing techniques. Currently, any structure would have required to either be flood-proofed, dry flood-proofed, or elevated. FEMA has provided some difference allowances, especially on parcels that are like 100% in the floodplain. So that's not something that everybody will be able to use, but if there are no other options for where you can build on your property, we now have another option that's short of having to go through the variance process. So the second part of that is there's also now a provision for the construction of an accessory structure in the floodplain on a property that's 100% in the floodplain. There's venting, there's engineering requirements to go with it, but again, it's more of an administrative process that wouldn't require going through a variance. The current wording that is in our proposed regulation has a maximum of 400 square foot, so basically a two-stall garage somebody could construct. Right before the hearing, I was contacted by the state to say that that FEMA came out with new guidelines that they can now allow that to go up to 600 square foot. I mentioned that to the planning commission, but nobody really suggested making any change. So at this point, we just sort of kept going with the 400 square foot. Both of those items are supposed to be structures of sort of minimal value, but it just at least provides an opportunity for somebody to develop. We also made some changes in regards to cumulative improvements of property. So if somebody's remodeling their house or building additions multiple times, maybe over a short period of time, if the total of those values end up exceeding 50% of fair market value, then you are required to bring the structure into compliance with regulations. And so it sets a sort of a 5-year time period. So each 5 calendar years, if you would ever exceed 50% of fair market value, then you have to bring it into compliance. And then there are just some other changes that were made to the regulations that mainly followed other portions of the zoning regulations referred to the floodplain regulations, and so just trying to coordinate all of those elements. So there was a few other changes that were made, but those are the primary items that were included. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any, or go into more detail if somebody wants.
So lots of change to the verbiage, but the function's largely the same?
Yes.
Other than the changes you noted?
Yes.
When it went to the planning commission, were there any notable comments?
No, I think they just had some discussions, especially on the allowance for the accessory dwelling and the agriculture structure, how that would work. That's probably more where our discussion was.
Okay.
Is it my understanding that our new regulations have to be sent to the state and they have to go through them and approve them?
Yes, after the planning commission meeting, actually before the planning commission meeting, I sent them to the state. They sort of did a cursory review just to make sure that everything was reasonable and the response was good. After the planning commission's meeting, I actually sent it back to the state again, and they did their official review and have said that what I have proposed is in compliance with the federal and state requirements. So everything is good to go. And then we just have to make sure that we have this adopted before the maps go into effect. So we still have a little bit of time. But as it's worded, they have been approved by the state, and we've received their sort of signed document on that. So.
And the March 8th is important because if we don't have it done by March 8th, then people can't qualify for.
Yeah, no new policies could be issued, and existing policies would not be able to be extended at that point if we didn't adopt the new regulations. So.
Kenny reached out early to me, early and often in this process in my capacity as county counselor, and feel like he's been incredibly diligent. I mean, Kenny's proving to be incredibly diligent on everything, but certainly this has been a very thorough process, so I'm comfortable with the product that is in front of you guys today.
Yeah, it looks like to me if anybody wants to do something that might be in the floodplain, they need to check in your office to see what the footprint is and go from there.
Yeah, and what I tell everybody in regards to floodplain is first, try not to, be as far out of the floodplain as you can, as high as you can. To me, that is the best way to do anything. But we are going to run into scenarios where existing structures, especially already in the floodplain, or especially in some of our small town sites where you do have whole lots that are just in the floodplain. And so, there are going to be times where we have to deal with this, but.
There's no doubt the flood insurance program being federally backed, what they're ultimately trying to do is reduce losses from flood, so.
Yep.
And save tax dollars.
Any other questions, Kenny, on this one? Motion would consist of considering approval of amendments to the Franklin County zoning regulations to include provisions to comply with construction standards and to use regulations of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, for development within the special flood hazard areas 100-year floodplain as shown on the federal insurance rate maps, FIRMA, effective March 8th, 2022.
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
Janet?
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Dickinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Chair Dunn.
Yes. Okay, Kenny, keep.
Okay. The next request is another rezoning request. The property is currently, I want to say it's about 30 acres in size, if I remember right. They're proposing to split off a 3-acre tract to sell to, I believe, a family member to be able to develop a house site on it. This one, and it actually somewhat goes along with the following request, which is a subdivision plat as well. So they're requesting to rezone a portion of the property from the A2 Transitional Agriculture District to the R3A District. This property had previously been part of a lot split before. And so as part of this, they actually had to go through a subdivision plat rather than another lot split because the property had already been divided once. And then the other items that come up on this were based off of how the property was previously divided. It didn't provide the necessary frontage that would normally be required. And in order to split off the 3-acre parcel, the Planning Commission also had to grant a rule exception to our 4-to-1 depth to width ratio that we have. And so the Planning Commission did approve both of those and also did make a recommendation of approval for the rezoning to the R3A district. I think the other item that we did note, well, I'll leave that on the subdivision plan because that's more of an issue. So the Planning Commission did make a recommendation of approval of this, and I would recommend that the Board of County Commissioner accept their recommendation.
Any questions about this item? An affirmative motion would read, consider the approval of rezoning application 2109-1911 Barry to rezone approximately 3 acres from the A2 Transitional Agriculture District to an R-3A Single Family Residential District.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, Janet?
Commissioner Dickinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Chair Dunn.
Yes.
Okay. Here's the final item. This is for the subdivision plat that related to that previous rezoning request. So it was a 26.49 acre tract that they're dividing into 2 different tracts, one being a 3 acre. As I stated, the Planning Commission did approve this subdivision plat with a couple rule exceptions for the lot width and also the width to depth ratio requirements for the larger tract. It doesn't quite have the width that would be required, and then with that, it doesn't meet that width to depth requirement. The other item that I was going to note on this one, this is an area that has quite a few entrances already along this portion of the road. And with where they were wanting to divide the property into 2 different tracts, there was no way for this property to meet the 550-foot separation distance that we would normally require. And so one of the requirements on the plat was that they would do a shared access easement between the 2 different lots so that hopefully we're at least reducing, I mean, we're not creating any additional entrances than would already be permitted. So that would be the other item that's a little bit unique. I did actually just receive the Mylar for this request. I have it with me, but we have not been able to get the final signature from Jim Schmidt yet. And so I'm still recommending that the Board of County Commissioners approve it, but I was going to hold off on having you guys sign it until we get sort of those other signatures on it. So I'd probably just bring it back to get a signature at a future date, so.
And certainly, I don't have any issue with approaching it that way, and I do want to bring something to light. Kenny talks about special considerations regarding entrances. One of the things he does very well, and I'm comfortable that David would echo this, is there is a lot of communication between planning and public works, and it's communication that hasn't always been there. So I appreciate Kenny and David and their willingness to discuss these things, because obviously the location of our entrances, not only from a traffic safety standpoint, but also a road maintenance standpoint, it really matters. So appreciate the two of you getting together and discussing those things.
Okay, any other questions about this? Positive result would be consider accepting a dedication for the final plat of Berry Addition. Your motion.
I make the motion.
Have a second?
Second?
Okay, Janet.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Dickinson?
Yeah.
Chair Dunn.
Yes.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Kenny. Appreciate your
Boy,
presentation.
do you want to lead a slow clap for Kenny while he's...
Appreciate that. I was expecting about a 3-hour meeting.
Yeah, we're moving, man, we're moving.
Okay, David,
Okay, Commissioners, this first item that's before you is related to some 3 new groundwater monitoring wells. As we expand the construction and demolition landfill, we have to demonstrate compliance with KDHE's groundwater separation requirements. And although we've got quite a number of monitoring wells spread around the site, because we are expanding so far to the east, we need to have some additional wells on the eastern portion of our property in order to demonstrate that compliance. And so that's what this proposal is before you. It will help us, well, we have to have that information whenever we go through the permitting process.
Will any of the existing wells have to be relocated?
No, ma'am. They're all going to be just fine. And if you recall, probably a month ago or so, we hired SCS to go out and do the monitoring that we're supposed to do on I think every other year basis. And so they performed that already so that they have that information. We would have done these projects kind of at the same time. They had a difficult time finding a drilling contractor to be able to drill and install those wells. So that's kind of why there was a delay. Be happy to answer any other questions.
any questions about these wells?
No, it's just a necessity that we have to do. I mean, it ain't a question of, it's just a question that we need to move forward because something needs to be done out there if we're going to expand. And if there isn't any more questions, I'd make a motion to move forward.
Second.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Dickinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Chair Dunn.
Yes. Talk about chip seal.
Yeah, so it's time to get our chip seal contractor on board. We advertised the project in the newspaper, and we sent bid packages to a number of contractors. We received 2 bids for that work. I was a little disappointed in that, but I think in talking to contractors, it's due to their workload. And so we opened those bids last Friday at the clerk's office. Vance Brothers submitted the lowest and most responsible bid of $969,073.75. And that is for the lightweight aggregate that we've been using for the last 5 to 10 years or so. And I would recommend that we continue with that process on this project. And just to reiterate, this particular project is in the northeast portion of the county. There's about 35 and a half miles or so that we're gonna put this chip seal on.
Who was the other person that bid?
APAC out of Emporium.
Okay.
So Circle C did it last year. They were just too busy to
Yeah,
bid
and
again?
I reached out to them personally, and I haven't had a chance to follow up with them to visit with them, but I visited with the guys at the bid opening, and they were all talking about how much work they had on the books already, and so I suspect that is the primary reason that they chose not to bid this time around, but I'll be following up with them. They did a great job for us last year, and I was disappointed to see that they didn't participate this year.
Well, one thing I've noticed, the CML, the lightweight expanded shell material, usually most people can get it in the mid-60s. The winning bid this year is in the mid-70s. I wonder if that's something we could try and contract directly with the mill to get and stage, because I guess a lot of the times the reason we can't get the project started earlier is they're waiting to accumulate material, and of course we can't commit to ahead of the year to spend money for the next year. That's always been it, but if we could have that material here and staged, of course we would want to have a calculated application rate, so they're not wasting our material, but that, I mean, we already do that, so that
Right.
information's available, but it seems like
That,
we're doing a 25% less this year and paying just a little less than we did last year, so
It's-
the rate's about 20% higher per mile.
yeah, it's much more expensive this year.
Yeah.
Certainly, we can look into that.
It looks like it can still be bought for the mid-60s, because the losing bid was able to pick it up for that, I
Correct,
guess. So-
correct. And I will, what I'll do is I'll get with the Buildex, produces that up in the city, and I'll contact them and see logistically what that would look like, and bring that back to you at some point to walk through that, to make sure that's something that we want to do.
David, do you think that it's the prevalence of stimulus funds and municipalities doing more chip seal that has led to these contractors being so busy?
Some of these contractors only have, one crew that does chip seal, and they use some of those same personnel on larger projects. The APAC, for example, they normally run a 16-person chip seal crew. Currently, they've got 6 employees on that, and they are struggling to find. So I suspect that some of these increases in prices are due to these contractors knowing that they're gonna have to pay more for personnel and those sorts of things. Plus, materials are, oil and gas are, those things are more expensive.
I was
But-
surprised the emulsion's about the same, but per unit, but
Right.
not mobilization.
Exactly, and so they're able, in the mobilization, that's more than just getting the equipment here. There's lots of things that are wrapped up in that. But to Derek's point, there is a tremendous amount of money on the street. All communities are doing projects because of the dollars that they have available to them. So our limited number of contractors are all stretched. They're not having to work very hard for the projects. In fact, while I was talking to the APAC representatives, they were sharing, just here within the last few weeks, they bid a project down south in a community, and the lowest bid was over 300,000 above the engineer's estimate. And the engineers work really, really, really hard to make sure that they are the most extreme bid, and to be that far over the engineer's estimate. He didn't tell me what the total bid number was, so I don't know how, what that number is, but they were all surprised, and I think that's going to be a continuing concern going forward for everybody that's doing projects right now.
Dollar just doesn't go as far.
It does not.
Wow.
Okay, any other discussion or questions of David? As a response, consider for approval awarding the bid for the 2022 chip seal project, Advanced Brothers Incorporated, in the amount of $969,073.75 for the CML chip option. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve, Roy?
I have a second.
Second.
Hey, Janet?
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Dickinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Chair Dunn.
Yes. Okay, when
Give you a time frame, David?
No, but in the bid specs, they've got to be done in early to mid-September. So that still should be a nice window for us to, if we've got some heavy patching and that sort of thing that maybe we can do ahead of time, we'll be able to do that, and they'll follow up with the chip seal after that. I haven't, after this meeting, I'll be reaching out and having some of those discussions with Vance Brothers. Up to this point, other than the bid opening, I haven't been in contact with them.
Hey, David, talk about paint.
So to go along with that is the striping that we'll need for these roads that we're going to chip seal. Once again, straight line striping out of Nebraska was, actually, they were the only bidder this time, at a cost of $50,410. And again, those prices are up over 20% as well.
When you're doing this paint striping, do you look at other parts of the county on the hard surface roads that might need to be?
We have not done that to date. We do have some areas where we have done some blade patching that probably need striping, and we can certainly visit with Straight Line about those areas to see if they would be, certainly they'd be willing to get a price to restripe those areas. Some of these areas that I'm talking about, like out on Labette, they're still, it'll be year after next before they come up in the rotation. And so if you'd like, I can reach out to them to see if they would provide an additional number for those areas.
I think it'd be a good idea to look at our other roads that might, the stripes might be worn down or wore off or real dim or something like that, that
Okay.
we might include in the striping deal.
How many miles are we doing this year?
35 and a half.
Is that more than
It's a little bit less.
what?
It's a little bit less than what we did last year. We did approximately 50 miles.
Paying, for yellow, we're paying 504. We paid 410 last year.
Yes,
For white, we paid 335 last year, and this year we're paying 458.
that is correct. And they, I didn't include it in the packet, but they did include a letter in their bid package kind of explaining the reason for the cost increases, and it's due to supplies of the material to make the paint.
Any other questions, David? Motion would read, to consider for approval awarding the bid for the 2022 pavement marking project to Straight Line Striping Incorporated in the amount of $50,410. I hear a motion.
Motion to approve. I got you the motion. I don't know if you heard me or not.
Okay, we got it now. Okay, Janet?
Commissioner Dickinson?
Yeah.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Chair Dunn.
Yes. Last item is consider holding a public hearing. Go ahead.
Yes, so I was approached by some landowners that own property down in, I believe it's called the Peoria Bottoms. They have, down in that, there's a number of owners that own property down there. Two owners that own the adjacent sides of Alabama Road. I'm sorry, I've got the wrong one. Utah Road going north of Kingman Terrace down in the Peoria Bottoms. So those owners approached and have submitted the letter to us asking us to vacate that portion of Utah Road north of Kingman Terrace. Back in 2012, the landowners at that time in the county vacated a portion of Utah at that time from about a half mile south of K-68 down to the south side of a steel truss bridge. My understanding is that bridge was not in good repair at that time, and rather than the county spend money repairing it, we vacated the road and that went to the adjacent landowners. Since that time, a new landowner has purchased most of that property down there, along with one of the original owners. They're the ones that approached us this time, and they are interested in closing that road going north from Kingman Terrace up to where the previous road vacation was, which is just south of that steel truss bridge. And it's the same, it's the usual reasons. People, they go down there, they throw trash, they get into the fields, they go where they don't belong, and so they would like to eliminate that road and have a little more control over it.
Is that all flood ground down there?
It is.
So it's not gonna get developed anyway?
No, sir. And so in order to do that, we need to hold a public hearing here in a few weeks, and with your approval today, we will start that process. We will put notices in the newspaper, and we will send out certified letters to the adjoining landowners.
Okay, a positive motion on this. Consider holding a public hearing on March 2nd, 2022 to consider vacating 2650 through 2800 Utah Road from the north right-of-way of the Kingman Terrace north to a point 25 feet south of the steel truss bridge.
Motion approved.
A second.
I'll second it.
Hey, Janet?
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Dickinson?
Yes.
Chair Dunn.
Yes. Okay, time for staff reports, Derek.
Yeah, just real quick. I want to talk briefly about our finances. You'll all note that we have a new floor in this room today, replacing the floors out in the annex. To be clear, we're paying cash for that. I mean, that's money that we have. We've redid the walls in the annex, cash. We've put LED lighting in the ceilings, cash. You've replaced the roof on the jail and the district court, cash. You've painted the old courthouse, done any number of projects on that. You paid cash for that. We just did several $100,000 of HVAC work in the district courthouse. You paid cash for that. We have a countywide software project coming up that is going to be $500,000 or so. We're paying cash for that. That is all literally money that we have on hand. We don't have it on hand because we're flush. You will also note that in the last 5 years, we have, counting this year, we have dropped the mill 5 mills. 5 mills in 5 years. So we're not raising taxes while we're doing this. We're doing it because we have leveraged other resources to help lower the property tax burden. We're doing it because we've got a fantastic leadership team. That leadership team has a group of fantastic employees. And so what we've done, we couldn't have done without the 5 of you. And so you've done a fantastic job, and I hope you're proud of it. I mean, people see a lot of improvements happening, and we're doing it without increasing taxes. So I say that from time to time, but certainly just don't want the public to forget that because you guys have done a heck of a job and we appreciate that. So that's really all I have. Thanks, Roy.
Thanks, Derek. Anything else, Kenny? Okay. Dustin, you want to say anything? Okay. Christie, you want to say anything? Okay, Casey, can give us an update on everything?
Morning. So COVID numbers are trending down, which is great. There were a few changes this week in booster doses that came out. So now they're recommending those at 3 months after your primary series instead of it was 5 months. And Johnson & Johnson also has a second dose now if you get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. We are planning another PEDS clinic for later in February and coinciding that with the second dose to be given during spring break or right before spring break. We're trying to figure out which date is the best for everybody. But other than that, I don't really have anything else on COVID unless you have questions.
So a booster after three months after your, so what if it's been 3 months since your booster? Giving any kind of recommendation?
At this point, they're giving clinical judgment, is what they say. So physicians can make a judgment call based on somebody's health. Yes, yes. So that actually came out this week too. So clinical judgment. Another question we get a lot. I get this question, and people call the health department all the time with this question is, if I've had COVID, when is it safe for me to either get the vaccine or get a booster? And we had this discussion with Dr. Ransom yesterday, and there's no real guidance on that, but they're finding that if you're feeling well, past COVID, like once you're feeling well and ready to get it, then to get it. So it kind of varies by person. He's telling people to wait a month, but also if somebody has to travel or there's a special reason they should get it before a month, then he definitely encourages that. Anything else?
Questions of Kristen or Casey?
I will mention that Brandon Sands, Amy, and I went out to the visitor center yesterday to start figuring out when we can get stuff moved around and cleaned up. There's a lot of stuff for us to get out of that building before the Historical Society can begin their process of moving. So we plan to be out there all day for a few days. There's a lot of old brochures. We'll go by date that we'll be recycling and just figuring out how our storage is going to work exactly and getting that all taken care of. I know the Main Street Association has some stuff in the basement. The Quilt Guild has stuff in the basement. So getting with all those groups to get that all taken care of as well. All right.
Thank you. Dustin, do you have anything? No, sir. David, anything else?
So last Thursday and Friday, our team spent most of their time, excuse me.
Take 5.
Sorry about that. Most of our team spent Thursday and Friday, excuse me, removing snow drifts from around the county. And since then, we've primarily been working on tree and brush removals. There's a bunch of those spread around as well. Due to the nice weather, we're out patching on our blacktop roads, and obviously the moisture that we got through the snowstorm is really paying dividends on our gravel roads. So our blade operators, many of them have been working a few extra hours to take advantage of that. And as we get into next week, and depending on whether or not we get another snowstorm, we'll start picking up work orders again and moving those forward. Last night, I presented the Demolition Assistance Program application to the city of Richmond, and Monday night, I was in the city of Princeton doing the same thing. I think both communities received that well, and I certainly told them that if they have any questions or once they get started with the process, to let us know, and we'll provide any assistance that we can with regard to that. And then I'll be hitting the other communities, Lane, Williamsburg, Rantoul, Wellsville, and Pomona over the next few months, doing the same sort of thing. Dust control applications that you all approved earlier, we'll be sending out notices, and we're asking folks to have their information back to us by April 1st so that we can get started with that, hopefully, end of April, early May, to get a good long season on that. And I will have one more road vacation coming up here in the next few weeks, as get those documents all prepared. So that'll be before you soon as well.
Thank you, David. Any questions of David before we? Hey, Jen, anything?
Just wanted to let you guys know, and kind of going along with what Derek said, we have started the budget process for 2023. We got the calendar put together that we're planning to work off of, and as you guys remember, last year, the timeline got extended, so we don't actually approve a budget until a month later than we had in previous years. So we do have extra time in there, so it doesn't seem so compressed, but we don't want to start late and then have to compress it all again, so we're trying to stay on a similar schedule. So we did send the community partner packets out, so if you guys, as you're going to meetings, have any questions from those and those groups, please have them reach out to me, or Casey is fielding some calls on those too. We're happy to walk them through the process. We did include Richmond Fair and Lane Fair this year because they were receiving some money from the fair premium and fair building money that we allocate every year. So we wanted to go ahead and include them in that process. So I've already heard from one of those individuals that does that budget. Also, we'll be getting ready to send out department head budgets at the beginning of March. So we're getting going on that. If you guys have any questions about that, don't hesitate to reach out to me.
With regard to the 23 budget, and you got a little glimpse of it today with, the chip seal and the paint, just the increasing cost of goods and services and inflation. That doesn't just affect Public Works, that's organization-wide. The price of employees and labor is going up. So I say all of that to say, we all know there's new legislation, and revenue neutral is something that we hear a lot about, and just would ask that you just think about, how do we stay revenue neutral when the cost of all of our goods and services are going up? That's a big challenge, and so that's something we're probably going to talk about a lot over the next 6-8 months. Just FYI. So thank you.
Also, one thing about the revenue neutral, just a reminder that we do have to send out that notice this year as part of that legislation. So I am working to figure out how we go about doing that. Obviously, if we're going to send it out in-house, we're going to have a lot more envelopes. We're going to have, staffing to stuff all those. Jamie said it's about appraiser Jamie said it's about 14,000 properties that we'll have to send out a notice to. So we have from time to time used like Postalocity. The treasurer's office does use a outside company to do their mailing in November. So just comparing and contrasting those costs to see if it makes more sense for us to send it out. And there is a very short timeline that I'll have to prepare it and get it out in order to meet the 10-day window before everyone's hearings, and when hearings actually start for that Senate Bill 13. And it doesn't I'm not doing it just for us. I have to do it for every other taxing entity that has a revenue neutral rate hearing. So I have to input all of that for all of the different fire districts, cemetery districts. So that makes that timeline very busy. So working with other counties across the state to explore what our options are, and make sure that we're not all trying to use the same vendor. So that will probably be coming to you guys.
I don't know if you guys know this off the top of your head. I brought it up once. Do you know what it ended up for the year for the alcohol tax funds, the small community, you know what?
I don't, but I definitely can have that for you next week, or
I
if you
know.
want that before then, I can send it out to you in an email.
That's fine. Well, I just knew, ran through it, talked about, and that was a pretty sizable little chunk of money they got. I mean, compared to years past, that's why I wondered.
Yeah, if you guys will recall, when Buckview moved out
Yeah.
into the county, that gave us an additional person paying in a substantial amount into our alcohol tax. And that money comes into us in a couple different accounts, a portion of it into, the special parks account that we pay out to the small cities. Some comes into the special alcohol fund that the sheriff does, like Dare Camp and some other alcohol-related programs, and I believe a little bit of it goes to the general fund too. So some different places there, but it did increase the amount that we gave to those small communities this year. And we always send out a mailer to them in late October, early November, letting them know this is the time to submit your receipts. And all of the small communities are welcome to submit receipts,
Yeah.
although we usually only get it from a couple. So.
It was a good deal. I'm glad to see that come back. That's all.
That's all you got today?
Up for that answer.
Oh, okay. Rod, do you have anything? I don't have anything. Diane?
On Thursday, I had a meeting with the KCCA board, talking about the spring conference. They're talking about doing it in Salina in April. Dates haven't been set, depending on availability of the conference centers. And if there's anything, if you think you might would like to go, if there's anything you want to have discussed, if you have any ideas for topics, let me know. The Food Policy Council met on Monday. They did updates on their programs, and then they also had a discussion of if the food sales tax is eliminated, the state portion, how that's going to affect people being able to purchase, food. That's basically what the council is all about, being able to, that people can get food that need food. The city of Princeton also had their meeting on Monday. They had a pretty lengthy discussion on the report that they got about the ditches in their community, and they know they're in bad shape because they've had a lot of flooding. It's one of those things that for a small town, what it's going to take care of that, it's pretty, yeah, it kind of deer in the headlights kind of thing. Oh my gosh, we don't have that kind of money. And I was really proud that both David Lee and Paul Bean were there to help kind of facilitate that discussion and give them options maybe on where they might be able to get financing for that. And I was just thinking, when you talked about people getting bids that are way higher than the engineer's estimate, a small town like that, if it's way more than that, that's huge for them. So we're hoping that maybe there's money available through the infrastructure that's coming down. Yesterday morning, the chamber board had a meeting, just basically updates. And then their annual meeting has been moved to the end of March because of the COVID numbers in January. Last night, I went to the United Way board meeting. Again, they're trying to do their campaign and still with COVID, so they can't really go out like they would usually do. And then they had a pretty extensive discussion on how they can help the homeless. Really pop-up shelters are not an option right now, again, with COVID numbers. And so when there's cold, they had quite a few people last week when it was really cold at the hotel. They had a bill for about $2,500 for all the people that were staying there. They also provided meals for them, took meals out to them, and also trying to provide, counseling on how to help them get to the point where they're not going to be homeless, where they're not going to need that. And then the City of Ottawa, I listened to both the study session and the meeting. I think they're dealing with some of the same things that we are. They doing their floodplain regulations, still talking about the possible solar field out by the new industrial park, and the ROZ, the Rural Opportunity Zone, that we did it as a county, they're considering doing as an employer. And anyway, that's, I think, about all I have.
Thank you, Ann. Colt, do you have anything? Okay, I went to a Zoom meeting on Heartland Works last week, and it's my first meeting with them. There was a whole lot of people on that call, and trying to get an idea of everything that was going on. Main thing they did was their audit for their organization. That took a long time to go through the audit. But they're trying to kind of decide whether to have brick and mortar facilities in different areas for their, where people could go, or have like the mobile trailer sites like they had out here in the parking lot for people looking for work. Heartland Works is underneath gets their funding through the Department of Commerce for their activities, and it's trying to match employers and employees together for employment. And I don't know, Cole, you might add some more stuff on it. I am doing that in there, so.
The gist of it, yeah, yep. So John's been on that board, Cohen's been on that board for a long time.
Okay, anybody else have anything?
Yeah, I misunderstood it. I do have a couple things. I did go to Wellsville Chamber of Commerce yesterday. Casey attended that meeting. Paul Bean attended that meeting. I think the chamber up there is very appreciative of the county participation in their council meeting and the interest they're taking. And Paul was up there and give detailed information. I didn't keep one of the flyer on the job fair deal he's having coming up the end of this month. Sounds like it's going to be a great deal. Going to have it at Ottawa High School, and they'll have all half of the day, I think maybe it's Ottawa only, and the other half would be the other schools. Be bringing them in, juniors and seniors, and he's allowing any businesses or jobs or information to have tables, booths, whatever, can set up there, and juniors and seniors would have an opportunity to visit with the county and the city and the schools and other businesses around that want to have a table there in a booth. And I think that's what a lot of it is kids coming out of school, even if they're going on to college. Maybe it's something that this entity or another entity could offer them once they get. Maybe it help them make their decision on what they want to go for in their college degree, you know, what would fit. And that's why a lot of, they can't keep people in their community, because maybe what they train for doesn't fit for anything that they have in their community. So I think they're really appreciative of Paul and his and Casey coming up. A lot of discussion on they did approve. They're still working with the city, kind of a joint deal for a chamber director / community, and they approved another 6 months worth of funds the chamber has, and the city is meeting with a couple of the people that are designated to kind of feel out what they want this position to look for. I think the city is really interested. They just want more information about what this person will be responsible for and what they'll do. I mean, they think it's a good idea. They just want to see more detail. So the council meeting, they give it 60 days, I believe it's 60 days to review it and go over it, and then they'll bring it back to the city up there. I'll be going to the Wellsville meeting tonight. I don't have anything on that. They did go to the Rantoul meeting the other night. If you know them, Rantoul, Richmond, and Princeton has filed together, and they're separate, but they all are joined together to have a codes court and available to them. Well, I can see the progresses of it helping already. They've had a couple of deals down there, but it ain't going to codes court. The people are going to go ahead and, you know, just a letter and, you know, what it took and what it would go on from there if they didn't do something. And even the one gentleman was there, and you know, the city was gracious about giving him another 60 days. You know, we want to see something, you know, but at least something coming out of it, they feel that there's repercussion if they don't do something now. Well, being that they had to, and I think the city hopes that never anything goes to there, that, the expense and they each have their ordinance, same ordinance person, all three cities use. So, that's kind of a joint deal there too, where they can use the same person in all three. They individually pay him for what they do for them, but it still gives him incentive too, that he's got more than one little place to go. He's got three places, towns to take care of. So that is a retired person too. So that's basically it. I can tell the chamber is real appreciative of Casey and Paul coming to the meeting.
Thank you, Don. I just want to thank Derek and Janet for Derek's comments about funds for the annex here and the other projects we've had. And when you look at being revenue neutral, it's going to be tough in times of inflation. So it's going to be a challenge for not only Janet and Derek, but all our partners are going to be submitting requests for funding, and I imagine they're looking at their budgets and might want to bump them up. So it's going to be we talk about 2023 and we're just barely into 2022, but it's something we work on way ahead of time, and inflation is definitely going to be involved in that. So I appreciate what Janet and Derek does, and I really appreciate what David told us last week about FEMA giving us refunds for all the 2019 and other events. And David's efforts on that is a template for other communities and organizations to use to try to get FEMA pay for some of their natural disasters. So appreciate that, David, too. And if nobody else has anything else, I'll entertain a motion for adjourn.
Second.
Just a reminder that there's the joint luncheon is next Wednesday at the city.
Okay, good enough. We're adjourned. Thank you all.